Hello, my friends, and welcome back to Alien Protocols. If you watched our last episode, you were probably suspicious why I left it at such an awkward and frightening point. The reality that as these ships get smaller, and as they get closer to the surface of the Earth, not only are they getting smaller, but there's a greater likelihood of invisibility as you get towards the surface of the Earth. Not only that, but the reality that most ships that are larger and have drones, by the nature of the size differential, usually would have at least one or two drones. So the closer you get to the surface of the Earth, you would have more numerous, smaller craft, and more likely to be invisible. And those just follow really simple logical assessments. And so you can imagine, out in the beyond the moon somewhere, that you could have a mothership, and then you could have intermediary craft, and they could have one or two or several of these smaller scout ships aboard. And then there are sample drones to go out and collect samples at different sizes, all the way down to these small sizes. And doesn't this one look interesting here with the circle and the square in it? And if you guys have been seeing these videos, let me see if I can pull out the squares. For some reason it's not. There we go. It gets a little fuzzy as we get close there. But these smaller sample drones are real. If you go back and look at some of our coolest videos, the one is that sphere capture. There is a type of this sphere, and we've seen it twice now moving at ultra high speeds between people, through people, and it appears as if it's not even using any sort of material camouflage. It's using speed as a camouflage, which is really cool. So you can imagine these craft getting smaller, more numerous as we get to the surface of the Earth. Did he say surface? Guys, if they are doing all of these things, all these other places, do you think they completely do not go onto the surface? Of course, the best CE5 groups know that this is of course true, that they do come to the surface and they do make themselves visible. And something very interesting that we've noticed here on this channel, and other researchers have noticed, is that UFOs have a tendency to represent near future technology. Meaning, if you go back through UFO history, the shapes and types of craft represent real Earth technology that happens about 70 years in advance. Or a type of craft that is just within the conception of the technology of the population. So if you go back in history and remember the airship craze, where all these airships were flying around before there were blimps. In some cases, 50 years, 60 years before there were blimps. And maybe some of these sightings inspired, or maybe because they were blimps, they were just in the conception still of humanity. One craft have changed over time, but there have been some consistent craft because of their efficiency of the shapes. They've always been maintained. But even stylistically, those have changed. The saucers in the 50s were very much 50s type saucers. They were more squared off and a little more, they looked visually a little bit less efficient. And nowadays, the craft that we're being seen, there's an incredible video, as you guys know, that we've talked about from the Nimitz. We've been talking about it before it was mentioned anywhere else, even on television or anywhere, from anyone at TTSA, they have an incredible video of a saucer. Absolutely incredible video of a saucer, and that there is a rendezvous between a Tic Tac and a saucer. And of course, it's logical to assume that they have such a high technology. Why would they need to physically transfer stuff? And if you remember carefully too, remember how the Tic Tac had this little L-shaped thing on the bottom, according to the description? If it was data, just electronic data, they wouldn't need to physically connect or get really close in proximity, like apparently was interrupted when the jets came in from the Nimitz. So I believe there's a very high chance that the Tic Tacs are, a scout and sample craft, and they were bringing them to an intermediary ship that was just under the surface. Because remember, source number one, that main pilot that we know is Lieutenant Commander Dietrich, a real badass. I mean, she's the real life Captain Marvel. 230 something carrier landings, night and daytime, 2 different battlefields. She fought in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, she's just a real consummate badass, and she should come forward. And I think it's almost sexist that, people are keeping the number one source in the most historic case secret because she's a girl. Anyway, so let's talk about what would be on the surface. Let's finally get to that point. There's 2 kind of surfaces when you think about it that we don't really consider too much. And of course there's like the city level and the house level, and from my videos that I've seen craft. And these craft I assume the bean craft that we saw, I'm going to go to the art program so we can do a little drawing and have some fun with this. The bean craft, I guess, was about 5 feet across from its distance. It was like maybe a 6-foot craft. I'm not certain, because you can be your own judge. It's a great quality video, and it goes on for 2 minutes, and we've got incredible zoom-ins of it. So you make your own call, but it was so close to the surface, and if you've seen some of our videos about it, it would disappear and come back again, and it would disappear from the sides first. It kind of went like that's as if the metamaterial was turned on and turned off. And especially near the end of the video, it does just that, as opposed to fly away. It disappears. So let's say you're in your living room. We've gone from that city size, and if you go back and look at our videos there's the small circular drones that are about 1 yard across. There's even a video of one on a beach flying at 3/4 angle across across the water onto the shore, between a surfer guy and another guy in the water. They don't even see it, and it goes so fast. And the craft, these circular balls in different cases, these very rare cases we put together, have the exact same craft, the exact same, these balls that have almost like a checkerboard kind of pattern on it. Not checkerboard, but a densely kind of, you can see this like interwoven kind of pattern to it. There's a fibrous-y kind of thing. So let's say you're in a city, or even in your house. Is it possible that you're being watched like a zoo, where the zookeeper dresses up as the environment, and the little lion in the zoo has no stinking idea? Now remember, they have been caught on military jets in infrared camera and not seen visibly. So they know they can go infrared or ultraviolet and be just out of our visual spectrum. But now that our technology is increasing, I would assume we would see a response in their technology. So they may not be visible in infrared soon, but I have a feeling they will stay visible in ultraviolet a little longer, because there's very few cameras that use ultraviolet and so forth. So I would presume that in certain places of interest, maybe historical figures, maybe people that are really interesting. I think this really inspiring person to me is Angus Young, the guitarist from AC/DC, where his whole body, his mind, everything, he is just there in the moment. He's radiating music. He's just, kind of transcendently expressing the art on multiple planes and levels, not just in the music and the chords, but physically and everything. And maybe we can't really, maybe we don't really understand what's going on around us. Maybe right behind us there could be someone watching us. Maybe someone's watching this video right now completely cloaked. So it's not unwise to have an ultraviolet flashlight, perhaps. But I really don't want any paranoid people running around with ultraviolet flashlights looking for aliens. That's a sure way to get a fast van ride to a soft, comfy room and a great, not too comfortable jacket. But the reality of this possibility, you have to consider it. If you look at what's been going on, and the type of crafts that have been seen, the fact that they do use invisibility, these crafts seem to get more numerous the closer we get to the surface, and you would think that they wouldn't stop their observation at a certain height. And CE fibers who've done it for a long time know it goes from atmospheric, where it could be like satellite solar panels reflecting, down to cloud level, and then to ground level, and then stuff gets real, my friends. So I just thought this was an interesting thing to conjecture. Now, of course, we could conduct experiments, and we could lay traps in terms of like camera traps at ideal locations or points of egress that would be logical, and we could capture more of them and find out that this is really true. They may have routes that are pre-established by all of them, that they know, the best way to get from the, Californias to across the mountains there is they take this one path that's very rarely used, and they might all use that path. That might be the case in Peru, and why we have those giant petroglyphs as they took their path into the rainforest to get the precious biological samples. What do you guys think? Do you think we should immediately be running around with ultraviolet flashlights and headlamps, screaming alien? Do you think this is a realistic possibility in terms of the science of the reality of what's happening right now in this field? I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Much love.